I want to talk with you about what God's been showing me the last few days, what He's been building in me for the last, probably about 5 days. He's been pressing this thing on me regarding truth and love. And He's brought it up in a few different relationships with people who I love. But these are also people who know that I have made this claim that I am a witness and then I'm going to die next year. And I have stood by that for the last 5 years that God has been doing what He's doing in me. I've stood by it from the very beginning, even before I knew that I was a witness, when He was telling me that I was going to die for what He'd have me doing. And then as He began to teach me in the Word, test me first, and then teach me in the Word what it is that He has me doing. And, the reality of it is, guys, is that I know the claim that I'm making. I know that it sounds insane, but I also know that the fruit testifies to what I'm saying. And that I have taught you what is in the Word, and then I've shown you as it's been happening, because that's what God has done with me. He taught me His Word, and then He's been showing me as these things are unfolding, look, this is what is happening. And a lot of the time, it wasn't at all what I thought, based on the Word, what I thought it was going to look like. The image of the Antichrist is a perfect example of that. Who would have thought that counterfeit Israel, this thing that the false prophet of the United States created, who would have thought that that was going to be the image of the beast that would be the thing that in the very end was going to persecute and kill God's people or force them to receive the mark of the beast? Who would have thought that? And yet we're seeing it right before our eyes. I mean, if you cannot see that this is the end, the only thing that can help you is returning to God. That is the only thing that can help you. You have to be able to see that the false prophet and that image of the beast are bringing judgment on those who will not worship that beast, who will not worship the image of the beast. Our constitutional rights, our Constitution is what we've always held up in the United States of America as being something that, no one's going to push through this. So why are people being arrested at a protest simply because Netanyahu has come into America to speak to Congress and ask for more money and lecture us about what we should be doing? Why are people being arrested for their constitutional right to protest? So going back to this thing that God started out building in me is that He pulled up these 3 relationships, and He has said things to me like, you're making a very big claim. And if someone were making that claim with you, you would either have concern for them because you'd think they'd lost their mind, and you would express that concern, or you'd be discerning it, and I'd be telling you the truth. And so what's going on with these people? And I had been feeling really grieved because one of the people I'd been reaching out to, and I felt like they weren't really reaching back or appreciating some of the things that I do. And so I brought that to him and was like, what's up with this? And God was showing me, if they don't love truth, they don't have the capacity to love. Because if you don't love truth, it means that God's not in your heart. So where would the capacity to love come from? Not only that, but people who don't love truth hide out in their darkness. They are not going to come near the light because they're afraid of being exposed. The same thing with another of these people. And, it can be really confusing because people can do things that are very generous and seem loving, but if you go any deeper than the act of what they're providing, the act of what they're doing, they can't handle it. And that's what I've been experiencing consistently with these people who I love, but they're not discerning. And the bottom line is, you can engage in acts and works all day, but it doesn't mean anything. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it does not mean anything when you're not bringing your heart into actual love, actual discernment, and actual love of truth. So in a couple days, we're going to be entering into the Feast of Trumpets. And we've been talking about the Feast of Trumpets and the importance of offerings and communication with God and how important an acceptable offering to God is. And I believe this is what he's trying to get me to understand, is not only what's going on in my own life, but also to understand that when people are doing for you, but their heart really isn't into the truth of things, you're not able to have truthful conversations with them because they get freaked out by it. They weren't willing to go that deep. I'm willing to bring you these things that I made or something from my garden or help you when you have, a certain need. But I'm not willing to have those real conversations with you. I'm not willing to discern whether what you're saying is real, whether who you say you are and what you say you're doing is real. Come on, guys. At the end of the day, you either think I'm nuts or you've discerned this. I'm not deluded about that. It doesn't make me feel bad that would be a question, because that would be a question for me too if someone was telling me that they were a witness. I would wonder, either you're nuts or it's true, and I got to go figure this out if I love you. Not avoid conversations with you about it while participating in acts that make me look like I love you. Now, what is the thing with God? What does he tell us? Both Cain and Abel brought an offering, guys. And I don't think the issue was whether God is a carnivore or a vegetarian. Because God has even said, if I was hungry, would I tell you? Everything in the earth is mine. Would I tell you like as though I need something from you? No, he rejected Cain's offering because he knew what was in Cain's heart. And so it's the same thing that he's teaching me right now in this situation with these people who express love in acts, in behaviors, in works. But in their hearts, it's clear that they think I'm nuts or they're not willing to discern the truth. And I'm telling you, it should not take that long for you to be able to go to God and discern whether what I've been saying is true and whether I'm doing what I'm doing or doing what I've claimed I'm doing. I've taught you the word. I've taught you what God expects in his covenant. I've shared my testimony with you about how he has brought me into his covenant and taught me what he requires. I've shared my testimony with you about why it is and how it is that God taught me his word. I've taught you everything that he has taught me, and I've shared with you as these things are unfolding. And there is no way that I could have lined all of that up to work the way that it has. There's no way. So you discern the fruit. So you go to him and you ask him, all right, these are the things that she's talked about. These are the things that we're seeing right now. Is it true or not? And then if that's true, because Jesus said, don't believe me then. Don't take my word for it. But the acts themselves should testify. The fruit should testify. So discern that then. And listen, if you discern that, then you should be able to ask him, all right, so the fruit is correct. A good tree can't bear bad fruit and a bad tree can't bear good fruit. So if I'm understanding this correctly, this person is speaking the truth. And if they are speaking the truth, then they are doing what they have said they are doing. I feel scared. Not scared in a way of like, spirit of fear kind of scared. I feel concerned. That's probably the better word. I feel deep concern for these people that I love because God's turning my heart away from them and telling me that I can't have anything to do with them. He's telling me things that he's talked about in his word, like there's separation from the clean and the unclean. And it goes against everything I want to do because what I want is to bring them in. What I want is for them to understand, but I've invested so much time in trying to get them to understand, providing Bible studies, giving them my videos, calling them up and talking with them and saying, look, let me show you what's going on right now. I have invested so much and I can't make them see. I can't make them see. I can't make them want truth. I can't change their hearts. Only God can do that. And my concern is that God is turning my heart away from them. And I love them, But there's a shift. There's a clear shift in what he's telling me is that I need to dust my feet. Yesterday I was harvesting some nectarines from my tree and I thought, surely I can't be hearing these things correctly. I can't be hearing it this way. Surely God doesn't want me to give up. He doesn't want me to give up on them. And I thought, I'm just going to put some of these nectarines in a bag and I'm going to go bring him to, one of the people that he's been talking to me about. And so I brought him over and I got a text a little while later, hey, we overplanted these tomatoes. Come over and, pick some tomatoes with us. And I was not there for very long and I passed out. He overwhelmed me. Like God overwhelmed me. And you could say whatever you want. People have all their explanations about this. Whatever God chooses to use, he chooses to use. It still doesn't change the fact that God is the one who did this. It was very, very hot outside. And that's what God used. And I started to get overwhelmed and, my stupid brain, what I've done my whole life is like, I'm just going to press through this. Well, I don't have that luxury anymore. My body is weak. God keeps me very weak. And I kept trying to press through and I ended up passing out. And still today I feel really nauseous and my body feels weak and I'm just sitting in bed. So I didn't get to really harvest much. I mean, I got, some peppers and some cherry tomatoes and I had to be kind of walked back to my house to make sure I was okay. I love these people. I don't want to separate from these people. But there's only so deep that you can go with people who don't want the truth. And God has not set us apart to have a series of superficial relationships and then deep ones over here. He's set us apart to be a nation holy to him and to be part of his body. And we need to have real relationships. But I was testing this, thinking surely we have this good part of our relationship. We share with one another and there's love in that, right? But God sent me a clear message about this. A witness that what he's been telling me is real. And then this morning when I was doing my journaling, one of the things that he was speaking to me is that everyone is going to receive the mark of the beast who has not loved truth, but has delighted in falsehood. And so this isn't about the ways of Carrie Ann. This is about the ways of God. And I don't know what the shift means. I don't know what God is doing, but I know that what he's had me doing is sharing what he shares with me. He's had me warning people in the role that I'm in as a witness. And now he's shifting to something else. And what I understand is that people have had an opportunity to hear the message. They've had an opportunity to demonstrate their hearts. They've had an opportunity to accept what it is that I've been saying and to demonstrate their love for me and their love for truth and their capacity to love at all, which comes from, number one, a love for God. So for him to start turning my heart away and telling me that I can't have anything to do with these people who I love, but it's clear that they don't love me. They might even think that they do, but they don't. If someone is telling you, I'm in this role, I'm going to die next year, and you love them, you will go and understand that message. You will go and discern that. Or you're going to pull the person aside and you're going to ask them what's going on and you're going to express your concern. Anything else is cowardice. Anything else is cowardice. Where else would it be coming from? It's certainly not coming from truth and it's certainly not coming from love. And so, as I'm understanding love, I'm understanding that truth and love have to go together. And I'm also understanding that God is truth and God is love. And that the capacity for either one has to come from him. So if you don't have that capacity, it is because God is not in you. It is because you are destined for something else. And I think that what's happening right now in this shift is that, there's something that God talks about in Ezekiel. He talks about that pot that's encrusted that you put in the fire and you're trying to clean the pot, but even putting it through the fire, it didn't get clean. And so God is saying to his people, I tried to cleanse you, but you would not be cleansed. Therefore, you will not be clean again until my wrath against you has subsided. So I believe that what is going to come is this judgment that God has been talking to me about, that I've been talking to you about. And I want to tell you something about this is, like, he doesn't give me the full picture up front. You see how he talks with me. It's not like the false prophets, the many false prophets here on YouTube and social media. He gives me a piece of the picture that he sits back and sees, what am I going to do with it? And what are the people I'm talking to going to do with it? And then he builds something else that seems totally unrelated, but then he brings it together. Like yesterday, me passing out, I wouldn't have put this together. But then this morning when I'm taking it up with him in my journaling, he makes it very clear. And then he starts talking with me about the mark of the beast and how all who have not loved truth are going to receive that mark of the beast. Now, do you think for 1 second he wants me connected with people who are going to receive the mark of the beast? Doesn't matter whether I love them. It doesn't matter whether they're my family. It doesn't matter. And none of that matters. The only thing that matters is, where is God taking me? What is he saying to me and requiring of me? And that's where I have to go. And that's where I have to work my heart, even though it hurts. And yesterday, one of the things that he was pressing on me is just the incredible deception that I have believed here, growing up here in the United States. And I feel grieved about this every day, about what I believed, that I would have voted on the right because I would have thought, well, that most resembles what God wants. And of course, I was most focused on, abortion and, issues like that. But I mean, give me a break. As we're looking at this now, we have Republicans, the so-called Christian, counterfeit Christian right, supporting genocide. It's kind of weird when the pagans are more moral than those claiming to be Christian. Now it's like, what would I have even done? What did I even believe? And then this narrative of terrorism, of Arabs being terrorists, or something that I came across the other day in China, that China is being accused of persecuting Catholics because they have said that if someone has abused a child or broken the law, they're not above the law. No, they don't get to go into confession, and then that absolves them from being held to account under the law. Do you know what happens in the United States, and in Europe? You go into confession, and that's considered private, privileged. Same thing in therapy. Although there are certain things, like in therapy, if you've hurt a child or an older adult or an incapacitated adult, then that's something that has to be reported. But in Catholicism, in churches, they have the privilege of privacy. So you can say, I've been hurting this child. A priest can say, I've been hurting this child, and no one reports it. And China is saying, no, we don't play that game. And they're being accused of persecution. It's like this play on words. They're being accused of persecution. Persecution for what? Not respecting the abominations and the justifications of the Catholic Church? Use your words. Say what it is. Covering up child sex abuse. Finding a loophole for deranged and demonic priests to get away with this over and over and over and over. It's not going anywhere. It's happening all across the world. You call that persecution? What about the child? So what have we grown up thinking about China here in the United States? What have we grown up thinking about communist Russia? Because they're looking a heck of a lot better than the United States and Europe right now. And counterfeit Israel. All these so-called chosen people, they're making a lot more sense to me. So many deceptions about what it meant to be Christian here in the United States, being conflated with so-called patriotism, which is just really idolatry. So much has had to be cleaned out of me that largely came from Catholicism, and the word tells us, Babylon the Great, the mother of all prostitutes, and of the abominations of the earth. Prayer in schools. I mean, I was upset about that at one time, that they took out prayer in schools. We shouldn't even be sending our children away to school. We should be raising them. They should be raised by us. And why in the world would we want somebody else who we don't even know and we're not present for them to be teaching our children how to pray and what it means to be Christian? No, thank you. I don't want that. I will teach my children in my home. Or how about the idea of civilization? Boy, civilization, right? Which came from largely the Romans. That's why they were a superpower. We want to be just like the Romans? Now we can't even understand what God established in his word because we're so busy being civilized and judging other nations who are not. But you know what? I bet they understand what it's like to wait for the rain and to judge themselves, to examine themselves according to whether God sends blessing or not. We don't understand it because we go buy our food in a grocery store. We don't work the land anymore. We don't understand any of this. We don't understand abundant harvest. We don't understand famine or drought. We don't understand the connection between our sin and needing to return to God when he sends those things. And so now we call it global warming and we think science needs to fix it. Not what God established in his covenant with us in 2 Chronicles chapter 7. When I send these things, if my people who are called by my name will turn from their wicked ways and repent, humble themselves, return to me, I'll restore your land. We don't understand that at all. And you know who definitely doesn't understand it? The Pope, who keeps leading you towards science, to going to doctors, to trusting in scientists, to praying for the land, as though the land somehow sinned against God. But the word says we're the ones who sinned. And that the reason he's sending these things to the land is because we rely on the produce from the land. No, but you don't rely on that. You rely on the work of your own hands. You rely on a civilized society in which God is obsolete. The Constitution has always been something that we held up as being a security, as being something that we could rely on. People are being arrested for free speech, guys. People are being persecuted for free speech. When the word talks about how the false prophet brings down fire from heaven, that's always been judgment. Brings down fire in full view of people so that by those signs that it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, the Antichrist, testifying to the Antichrist, forcing everyone to fall in line. It deceived the inhabitants of the earth. And it ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. That image is counterfeit Israel. The second beast, which is the false prophet, was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast so that the image could speak and cause all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. This is not a statue. This is living. And it is causing all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. All who do not agree with what Netanyahu and counterfeit Israel are doing to be persecuted right now, and eventually they will be killed. And in fact, there are many who are being killed right now in Palestine. There are Jews who are being accused of being self-hating Jews, anti-Semites, right? Who are being thrown down in the streets. They're being arrested. Zionists in Israel are protesting the right to be able to sodomize prisoners. Anything goes. This is what they argue. That they can do anything they want to whoever does not worship this image of the beast. Sodomy? Call it what it is. This is what's happening. They stuck a stick in the rectum of a prisoner and damaged him so bad that they actually brought him to the hospital because he couldn't walk. The IDF soldiers brought him to the hospital. And we know that this is an anomaly. If they actually brought him to the hospital, it must have been pretty bad because usually they don't bring him to the hospital. And I can guarantee you that from now on, they won't be doing that. Sodomy in the Bible is considered worse than rape. Rape is bad, but sodomy is considered a greater sin. God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. This is what they're protesting, that they should be able to do this. These are the chosen people? How does anyone advocate for this? How does any counterfeit Christian stand by and say, yes, this is good, this is okay, finish them? How? Guys, we're at the end. Do you see it or not? Or do you turn your eyes to it because it's too hard to hear? Because I'm going to speak it to you as it's happening. I'm going to tell you that you are going to go into these jails. And these are the things that God's people are going to experience. And God said it would be that way. If you are in Christ, this is what the word says. Because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image of in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. That is counterfeit Israel. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast so that the image could speak and cause all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. The Bible states it. If you don't worship that image, you will be killed. But if you do, you will be killed and you will be thrown into the lake of burning sulfur where the smoke of your torment is going to rise forever and ever. It, the image, also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads. So it's the image doing this. Not the Antichrist. It is the image of the Antichrist that is persecuting. And if you can't see that that image is persecuting people right now, that your constitutional rights that you've been able to hide behind in the United States are no longer honored or respected or held up where this image is concerned. You cannot wear a shirt that says something against that image without being arrested and going into these prisons. And you want to say, oh, well, the United States would never do anything like that? Think again. You remember what the Jews said of Jesus' time? Oh, well, we're not allowed to kill anyone, so we're handing him over to the Romans to do the job. First of all, the United States has done these things in prisons. They did it in Abu Ghraib. They did it in Guantanamo Bay. They've done the very same things that Israel is doing right now. Second of all, if they can't do it here, they'll hand you over. The spirit of Satan did it once, it'll do it again. But it doesn't seem like the false prophet of the United States is at all concerned about holding up the Constitution. They're too busy worshiping the image of this beast and following everything that this image does. And everything this image now is telling the false prophet that it must do. Because that's what Netanyahu does. He comes over here and lectures us about what we're doing and influences our legislation. Do you love truth or not, guys? Because there are over 1,000 of you on this channel who need to get off the pot because God is shifting things. He has given you his witnesses to educate you in his word, to show you these are the things that are happening right in front of your face right now in fulfillment of what he has written in his word. He has given you his witnesses to warn and to share their testimony with you. And there are over 1,000 of you on this channel right now who could care less. Is God in you or not? Do you have the capacity for truth? Do you have the capacity for love? Because I'm telling you right now, this is not about me. You don't seem to even have the sense to love yourself enough to do what you need to do, to return to him, to discern with him, and to do the things that he has commanded you to do. You are not assembling. You are not observing his holy days. You are not observing his new moons. You have not returned to him. Why are you listening to me? The word says that people gather around God's prophets and listen to them as though there's someone who sings a love song. Let's go hear the word of the Lord, but they don't put it into practice. How is that to your credit? Are you going to live through what I'm doing in my covenant? I'm not going to be here that long. You're going to be here during the Antichrist reign. And for me, it's horrifying that right now these are the things that are going on when the Antichrist isn't even reigning yet. This is what's going on right now with the image of the Antichrist. This is the power they've been given, and they're not even reigning yet. Do you have any idea how bad it's going to get? How will you make it? Let me tell you what is being fulfilled. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Put on the cooking pot, put it on, and pour water into it. Put into it the pieces of meat, all the choice pieces, the leg and the shoulder. Fill it with the best of these bones. Take the pick of the flock. Pile wood beneath it for the bones. Bring it to a boil and cook the bones in it. For this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the city of bloodshed, to the pot now encrusted, whose deposits will not go away. Take the meat out piece by piece in whatever order it comes. For the blood she shed is in her midst. She poured it on the bare rock. She did not pour it on the ground where the dust would cover it. To stir up wrath and take revenge, I put her blood on the bare rock so that it would not be covered. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the city of bloodshed. I too will pile the wood high. So heap on the wood and kindle the fire. Cook the meat well, mixing in the spices, and let the bones be charred. Then set the empty pot on the coals till it becomes hot and its copper glows, so that its impurities may be melted and its deposits burned away. It has frustrated all efforts. Its heavy deposit has not been removed, not even by fire. Now your impurity is lewdness, because I tried to cleanse you, but you would not be cleansed from your impurity. You will not be clean again until my wrath against you has subsided. I, the Lord, have spoken. The time has come for me to act. I will not hold back. I will not have pity, nor will I relent. You will be judged according to your conduct and your actions, declares the sovereign Lord. And then he uses Ezekiel as a sign when his wife dies, and he is not, Ezekiel isn't mourning. He's not doing any of the things that are associated with mourning. And then people are asking him, why are you acting like this? Because you're going to go into captivity. You're going to experience all of these things, and you will not be able to mourn. You think anyone is able to mourn when they're going into captivity to this image of the beast? No, they're in survival mode. They're like the walking dead, being tormented and tortured in those jails. You won't have time to mourn. You won't have the space or the luxury to be able to mourn. So many of you think, I'm going to do this on my own. I don't need to connect with the rest of the body. I'm just going to assemble with my family. You make up your own rules about how this goes. You don't care about what God has commanded and what he has established about what he wants you to be doing. That isn't what he told you to do. How can you say that you are in Christ when you're not even in his body? When all you care about is your own house? Because the Bible I'm reading says that you need to be healed as an individual. You need to walk in the authority he's given you correctly over the house he's placed you. And that house needs to be managed well. And you need to be above reproach, which is questionable behavior, not above questioning. That you need to be managing your own house well, and then you can work in his house. But if you don't even connect with the body, if you don't care about the rest of God's people, you haven't fulfilled your covenant. You can't just make up the rules. God starts out the book of Revelation by giving you 3 chapters worth of warning. And in fact, more warning throughout the book of Revelation, but he specifically addresses the sins that are happening, even while saying, these are the things you're doing well, but these are the things that I'm holding against you. And if you don't change, if you don't repent, I'm going to take away your lampstand. You are not going to make it. He gives you all of that warning. He tells you how things are going to go in the end. That he's going to send his witnesses, his prophets. And what does he tell you about? Why has he sent prophets? To tell you about how God is going to send you a house and a car? Because I don't see that in Scripture. He sends his prophets to warn you. And in Revelation 2 and 3, there are only 2 of those bodies of believers who have been fulfilling the covenant. And they're spared from the hour of trial and testing that God brings on the entire earth. Why aren't the others spared? Because they didn't respond to the correction. You are playing with eternity, with your salvation, all while claiming to be in God. I'm not deluded, guys. I know the message that I'm speaking. I know the times. I know what God has me doing. I know what I'm saying to you. And I just wonder, why is it that you listen to what I say, but you don't put it into practice? It doesn't make any sense. It seems to me that the capacity to love truth and be saved is not in you because you've made up the rules about what's required in this covenant. You have better ideas. You're going to go do this on your own, right? That isn't what God established. He established metaphors such as a church, a body, a temple. How do you have a fragmented, you have stones just kind of doing their own thing? Just laying around on the ground? Not one on another, not being built and fitted together to rise and become a temple in the Lord. No, you're just, autonomous. You haven't discerned anything. Because if you really discerned, if you believe, you would obey. You would do the things that God has said to do. So it's true what the word says. Ezekiel 33, verse 30. As for you, son of man, your people are talking together about you by the wall and at the doors of the houses, saying to each other, come and hear the message that has come from the Lord. My people come to you as they usually do and sit before you to hear your words, but they don't put them into practice. Their mouths speak of love, but their hearts are greedy for unjust gain. Indeed, to them, you're nothing more than one who sings love songs with a beautiful voice and plays an instrument well, for they hear your words but do not put them into practice. When all this comes true, and it surely will, then they will know that a prophet has been among them. What's the message I speak to you guys? Do I have any personal gain? Because I know people are going to be upset. I know people are going to unsubscribe. I know people are going to dislike the message. It's really inconsequential to me as far as what people do in retaliation, because ultimately that's a heart issue. If you have discerned that I am a witness, but you don't respond to the things that I am telling you that you must do, you don't even believe. And if you're not asking me questions, you're not going to God and asking him if I am a true shepherd, if I am truly a prophet of God, it's because you don't care. And not because you don't care about me, because I'm no one. It's because you don't care about God. You don't care about truth. How can you be saved? How can you be saved going on YouTube and just listening to people, but never thinking that you need to put anything to practice, that you need to change anything? And I know that the rest of the people on YouTube that you're listening to, they don't challenge you to do any of the things I'm talking about, because I've listened to them too. They speak a message that keeps you coming back, not a message that God's prophets have actually spoken, which is a hard message, which is a difficult message to understand and to implement. For your sake, I hope that you listen to this message and that you actually put it into practice, that you actually go to God and ask him to move you into obedience and what he requires, because most of you are not going to make it. And indeed, if something doesn't change, if you don't return to God before that fifth trumpet blows and the witnesses are killed, you won't be returning to God, because the word tells us you won't. That window of time is closing in, guys. This is why God is turning my heart away from people I love and telling me that I can have nothing to do with them. Because why would he want me to have anything to do with those who are destined to take the mark of the beast, with those who have rejected truth? He says, because you have rejected truth, I reject you as my priests. My people perish for lack of knowledge, not because it's not accessible, not because he hasn't sent his son, his prophets, his word, because you've rejected it, because you don't respond, because you listen as though listening is going to get you saved. But James said, don't just listen. Don't just read the words. Do what they say. There's a shift. And if you're not seeing this yet, you need to pray that you do. There is a shift. I don't know all that it means, but I do know that judgment is coming. And frankly, you've left him with no other choice but to bring you into a position where you are motivated to actually return to him. Because if you don't return to him before that fifth trumpet blows, you will have forsaken eternity. I want to show you some things that the word says. Revelation 3. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars. I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Why does God say that? Because there are those who are claiming to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars and are of the synagogue of Satan, who are persecuting and killing God's people. So for you to go, well, I don't know. What if Israel, this counterfeit Israel, what if it's not? God has given you enough clues in scripture to understand that it is counterfeit Israel. And I'm not talking about all Jews. He's talking about those who claim to be Jews, though they are not. These are Zionists. These are those protesting their right to sodomize and rape prisoners, as though God would ever allow for this. I don't care who you are. If a man was attracted to a prisoner of war, he was told in the Old Testament he had to marry that woman, and he could not take her as a slave. She had to be his wife. So God established certain ways of being, certain decency. And you're going to tell me that you can justify in any situation murder, rape, torture, sodomy, that people of God protest their right? Who gave them the right? Only God gives you the right. These people are not talking about the Bible. They're talking about the Talmud and their many rabbinical teachings. If you're not Israeli, and now, by the way, you could actually be Israeli, but you don't support Zionism. You are considered Amalek, an enemy of Israel, and so anything goes. That is what is taught. Listen to the testimonies of previous IDF soldiers. They will tell you that they were brainwashed just like we were brainwashed in the United States. Any nation that prevents Jews from settling in the land of Israel, which includes Palestinians, are considered Amalek. During the 2014 Gaza war, a leading yeshiva identified Palestinians as the descendants of the ancient Amalekites and Philistines. What is descent, guys? Descent means nothing anymore. It was established in the Old Testament to help us to understand connection to. But in the New Testament, we're told that not all who are descended from Israel are Israel, and not all who are descended from Abraham are Abraham's children, and that a Jew is not one who is one outwardly, but inwardly through circumcision of the heart. The New Testament tells you the fulfillment of this. Do you believe or not? Do you care what God has actually said, or do you care about your own narrative? Do you take what you like and then leave the rest? Because that's what you guys seem to be doing. If you were taking the entire scripture, the entire truth as a whole, you would be concerned enough right now to actually respond to the message that God has me speaking. But I don't see you doing that. In fact, I see a lot of you promising and saying, oh, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. I see some of you coming on here ever so often and saying, oh, I'm suffering so much. We really need a place to gather. Well, you've been offered that dozens of times. Where are you? You should be able to see right now the warning that God has presented, that anyone who does not worship the image of the beast is being persecuted, jailed, and killed. And the Antichrist has not even risen to power yet, to the extent that it has been given the power to reign. How will you make it? You cannot do this on your own. You cannot make up the rules. You cannot be separated from God's body. If you have been trying to do this on your own and you're not getting it and you're hitting your head against the wall, there's a reason for that. I know that God has given you eyes to see, or glimpses of being able to see the things that I say. But you have chosen to be stubborn. You have chosen what you think is an easier way, where you don't have to be around others who are going to hold you accountable, where you don't have to be in the full covenant. And I strongly suggest that you read Revelation 2 and 3, and that you start to understand that God requires you to fulfill the entire covenant, that he requires you not to be an idiot and turn away people's testimony in favor of some covenant that you have made up, where you're hiding out so that you don't have to step into full accountability. Please discern this message with God.